And we're live. Hey, people. How you doing? Sorry about the slightly delayed start due to a little bit of a technical issue, but we're sorted now. Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, episode 210. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunChatLive.com. And as always, this episode is being recorded live on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel and Facebook page. So if you are listening to the podcast, thank you very much. And if you'd like the opportunity of joining us live and being able to ask our guests questions directly and also just mingle with the other people in the live lounge, network with other therapists, then that's all you need to do. Head to the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel or Facebook page at 8 o'clock, generally on a Tuesday. But if for all details, make sure you're following UK_STA on whatever social media floats your boat. So very shortly, this episode entitled MSK Health at Menopause. I can never say that word. I'd be a rubbish physio, wouldn't I? MSK Health at Menopause, new research. I will be joined by special guest Michelle Lyons, women's health physiotherapist and creator of Celebrate Muliebrity. I can say Muliebrity, but I can't say Musculoskeletal. There we go. Michelle Lyons will be the first speaker in the STA Theatre on day one of Therapy Expo, this coming November the 27th and 28th. And judging by last year's crowds, anybody who was there, I'm going to bring up the photo because it's just one of my favourite photos of all years. Let's bring this up so you can see it. If you listen to the podcast, you can't see photos, but if you'd like, stop the podcast now, go to YouTube or the STA210, and you'll be able to see well, at the moment on the screen, I've got a game, a variation of Where's Wally. I call it Where's Michelle. It's fantastic. It's such a beautiful photo. I can't remember who took this. I think it was Jake, but it just shows how busy it was for Michelle Lyons, and deservedly so. So if you are heading to Therapy Expo this year, then I would strongly suggest, if you're interested in women's health, then I would suggest you head straight for the STA Theatre at 9 o'clock on the Wednesday to make sure you get a comfy seat, because within minutes it's going to be like this, standing room only, which is fine. Standing, you can see all these people enjoying it, and they stayed there and they didn't wander, because that is how captivating Michelle really is. So you've got 92 days. I'm giving you a notice now. I'll be doing it every week to make sure you have a ticket. Remember, if you're an STA member, there's an STA discount. If you're not an STA member, then talk to your professional association and say, hey, how come you're not giving me a discount for the most beneficial and useful conference in the UK for my personal development and career? And see what they say. And if you are staying for 2 days, then do sort out accommodation now. The number of people who go out for 1 day and then they just think, this is amazing. Oh, I wish I was staying tonight. And then they have a few drinks and they think, I'm going to stay tonight. And then they realize there's nowhere to stay. Nowhere, no room in the inn. So if you're tempted, I would say do it, because again, you will, I can't guarantee you're going to get a monetary reward in your business, but it's probably the best way I can think in terms of CPD of improving your business. Honestly, if you're not familiar with Therapy Expo, then do have a listen to last week's episode 209, which is available as always on podcast apps and YouTube and at the STA210. That was called Getting Ready for Therapy Expo 2024 with special guests Molly Benson, content producer for Therapy Expo. Also with me was Vernon Smead, the business development manager for Therapy Expo. Also, we spoke to Anna Maria Mazzieri, who's the creator of the very popular hands-on hub theatre at Therapy Expo. And also with us was the wonderful Gary Benson, founder of the STA. So it's there, people. Have a little listen. We're not going to, well, we're going to be talking about Therapy Expo today because, like I say, Michelle Lyons will be presenting first thing on day one, Wednesday, 27th of November. So Michelle's going to be giving us a Q&A session. As I explained last week, at Therapy Expo, the STA Theatre now is going to be very much focusing on your feedback. And you said the intimacy of a Q&A session, having that speaker come from a massive theatre with kind of 100 people, where you, in theory, if you get there early enough, could be sitting on a nice comfy seat with headphones if you want, and being able to interact with the speaker that close. That was something which a lot of you emailed in and said, wonderful, wonderful, give us more. So we listened to you. We're doing that. And Michelle is going to do a Q&A session entitled Muscles and Tendons, Menstrual, Maternal and Menopausal Influences. And we have the good fortune of being joined by Michelle Lyons now, who is going to reveal some interesting new research around MSK Health at Menopause, as well as talking about what else she'll be offering at Therapy Expo this year. I'm going to say a quick hello to people who have joined us in the live lounge, so you don't feel left out. Taking a risk now. I'm just going to bring your comments straight up onto the screen. Absolute Physio says, doing the laundry and going to try and catch some Michelle Lyons wisdom at the same time. That's the wonderful Gráinne Donnelly. Multitasking only the Donnelly can do. Thanks so much for joining us, Gráinne. It's lovely to see you here virtually. Thank you very much for joining us. Nikki Mansfield is here as well, doing the laundry. Evening, peeps. Really looking forward to this one. Always a mind blower, Michelle. Oh, Michelle, here we go. Her energy as much as her content. How she manages to do so much in the same 24 hours as we mortals is beyond me. Oh, I think there's a tear coming out of her eye at the moment now. Hey, evening all, says Sir Glenn Murphy, MBE. Nice build up, Nikki. No pressure. Penny Marie Davis is here as well, saying hello. Hi, Penny Marie. Cecily Hislop has joined us. Loads of you joining us today, such as the popularity. Hello from the wild miss of Bodmin Moor. I don't know what accent to do that in. Can't see anything, so glad to be listening to this. Oh, I see. That's what Bodmin Moor is like. And also Gary Benson, founder of the STA, is here as well. Apologise for my tardy attendance. Automatic updates shut me down. There we go. Such is life, Gary. Karma getting you for something you've done previously. Anyway, so without further ado, let's bring up my guest for tonight, women's health physio and creator of celebratemuliebrity.com, Michelle Lyons.
Hey, hi Matt, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I am great, thank you very much.
I'm not surprised after a nice relaxed preparation for tonight. That's fine. No stress whatsoever.
No, none at all.
I'm absolutely thrilled that you are continuing tradition and attending this podcast from your car, which I believe was the same time as you did last time. So thank you for that.
Actually, I think it's our annual meetup.
In a car park, which sounds very dodgy.
I was on the road home. There was just no way I was going to make it back to the house on time. So I pulled into Tesco and live from Tesco's car park.
Or any other supermarket. We're not actually promoting Tesco's here. It could be any other supermarket. It could be an Asda. Could be, who knows. And where are you? In Dublin, is it? Or where are you at the moment?
I'm in County Westmeath, so it's about halfway between the east and the west coast of Ireland, right in the middle.
Oh, right. There we go. Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time and stopping in the Tesco's for us. I do appreciate it. You were indeed in the car park in our last time I spoke to you, which was episode 163, which was a year ago, Michelle. August the 29th, 2023.
Bonkers. Isn't that mad?
It's absolutely ridiculous, and it makes me feel very sad. But we won't get sad. But that was you just returned from Sydney for your involvement in the FIFA Women's Health Report. And like I say, that was a year ago.
That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. It's time is just, it's gone bonkers, I think, for me, certainly over the past couple of years since COVID, I think. But, you know, it's busy, but it's good. And I think I hadn't realized when I was talking to you this time last year just what an experience Therapy Expo was going to be. So now that I know, I have some experience to base my enthusiasm on. It was just an incredible experience. I mean, the buzz was immense, but just the conversations and the collegiate sharing, because it was quite multidisciplinary, and it was so great for me to talk to folks from all sorts of different professions, really working in the field of sports therapy. You know, it wasn't just the sports therapist. There was massage, there was physios, there was chiros, osteopaths, and it was such an exciting event to be a part of. There was a real buzz about it that I hadn't anticipated because, you know, generally conferences can be a little bit staid, shall we say. But Therapy Expo is, it's something that if I wasn't speaking at it, I'd be planning on going to. It was a really high caliber event.
That's really cool. That's so nice coming from a physiotherapist as yourself. And this year's quite exciting as well, probably because of what you witnessed last year, the MSK conference, which is within Therapy Expo. It used to be kind of a little bit of a secluded kind of traditional way of we're physiotherapy, allied health professionals, and you can do your massage stuff on the outside, your touchy stuff. But now, after a year of reflection, after last year's event, the doors are open and people can go to and forth because finally it's about the client or the patient as opposed to, you know, what certificate you got on your wall, which must be music to your ears.
It's, you know, at the end of the day, like we're all in the business of helping people live well and live better and recover from any injuries or malfunctions that they're having. And there's more than enough of that to go around. So I think we're better when we work together and come out of our silos. And I think that's really where some of the most interesting conversations were happening, kind of just on the outskirts and in the coffee breaks as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, it's going to be amazing to have you there this year again. And I'll tell you what, from chatting with Molly and Vernon last week, even they're surprised and impressed. One thing that really shows is the exhibitors just want to be there. The exhibitors normally are kind of a bit, which conference? It costs so much for exhibitors, but they're lining up. They're so excited, and new people as well, because they've just heard that this is the place for kind of evidence-informed therapists and people who actually want to make a difference. So very exciting. So I'm sure you've been up to loads. I want to quickly chat about, you've got a new batch of episodes coming up for the podcast, which I follow you on social media, which is great. I don't know, Nikki's right. I don't know how you managed to keep all this information out there and deliver it all as well. But yeah, you got some new podcasts coming out, a new batch. I think the first one was a couple of days ago, episode 46, Labour and Delivery Prep with Susanna Harmon. Tell us a little bit about that and what you've got in store for us, if you would.
Well, look, I'm really lucky because I get to gallivant a lot and talk to lots of different people and have friends all over the place working in different aspects of women's health. Most people, when I ask them to come on the podcast, are very generous with their time and knowledge. So I've got some really exciting ones coming up. Susanna came on and talked about labour and delivery prep and, just really empowering women. Particularly, I would say, I have a particular interest in athletes going into labour and delivery, but then also the recovery afterwards. So we're going to have some episodes on postnatal recovery. I've got a really fantastic hernia surgeon who came on to talk about hernias as a hidden cost of pelvic pain. What else have we got? Of course, we've got some menopausal health episodes coming up, just talking about the role of MSK in menopausal health, because it is actually, although everybody thinks hot flushes, night sweats when they think of menopause, musculoskeletal dysfunction is actually the most common problem that we see at menopause. If you look at the literature, it's actually more common than the vasomotor symptoms. And it can be more profound of a problem as well, to be honest, because people will have these issues where they're having, problems with their tendons, again, if they're exercising at a high level, joint pains, back pain, and they go and they get imaging and nothing is showing up on imaging. And unless you're actually asking people, well, okay, so how have your periods been? Are they getting a bit irregular? Any changes with those? How's your sleep? How's your stress? How's your nutrition? That can often be the driving force. And it's not just an older women issue. I mean, we're talking about masters athletes particularly, so from your 35 on, let's say. But even before that, there was research that came out just even 2 weeks ago showing that it was looking at the loss of lean muscle mass as we age. And for men, it starts happening really significantly from about 55 years old. But for females, it actually starts happening from the age of 31. So we know that estrogen, it's anabolic, it helps us build muscle, but it's also anti-inflammatory and it really helps that actin, myosin speed of contraction too. So you can really just have this kind of perfect storm happening with perimenopause, and a little bit of aging and the loss of muscle power and muscle pain. And it can really be a hidden driver of musculoskeletal dysfunction, and one that I think, working in conservative management, we certainly need to be aware of, and we need to be aware of the role that we can play, because we see issues with gluteal tendinopathy, with rotator cuff tendinopathy, posterior tibial tendon issues. And unless we're aware of what's actually driving the problem, we're not going to be able to help fix the problem. So I'm passionately nerdy about the hormonal and the endocrinology of musculoskeletal dysfunction, because I think if you understand that, then you've got the secret sauce for helping your female athletes. And again, an athlete is anybody who just exercises on purpose, but you can really help them troubleshoot and problem solve and get them back to physical activity, which we know is just the magic bullet for just about every issue of the body and mind that we're coming across.
Mm-hmm. I'm listening to you, and obviously people comment on this all the time. I hope you don't grow tired of it. There's a passion there, which is incredible. The way you talk and deliver it, and then seeing you, it must be interesting. Do you manage to kind of find tangible evidence that you are managing to get this evidence through, that you're kind of revolutionizing a little bit, maybe in terms of male audience, because what you're talking about is something that not once upon a time women's health was like female therapists would kind of have a look at it. But it's what you're saying means that let's not divide it into women and men. Everybody who works with females in pain needs to be knowing this. Is it happening? Do you feel quite positive?
It is. I do. I do, because look, I'm very lucky to be working with an organisation like FIFA, and I've recently been involved with Sport Ireland and the Irish Martial Arts Commission. And when you see organisations like FIFA, for example, kind of stepping up and shining a light on the importance of female athlete health, and funding research and publications. And that we're in the middle of the next World Cup cycle now, and we're working on developing educational resources for players, for coaches, and for the medical team as well. So I do feel that it's, having an organization like FIFA sit up and take notice and drive the conversation forward really helps bring it into the center, because it's not a niche topic. Like, this is an issue that's going to affect 51% of people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's fantastic. I'm going to give a shout out to Ian Wright, because he's been a staunch advocate for women's football and for bringing kind of, equal rights into training facilities and prize money and all that sort of stuff. And he was at the footballers conference in Sydney for the World Cup final last year, and he spoke really eloquently about it. And that's, we see more male allies coming in and stepping up, and female athletes are stepping up as well. So I'm helpful. Like, there's a lot been done. There's always more to do. But I finally feel like, we just had parity of female and male athletes at the Olympics in Paris. So I think we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. I mean, there's still some inequity in terms of, tennis and golf and other sports like that. But we're moving in the right direction. And I think what's actually really heartening for nerdy people like me as well, that's actually being reflected in the literature and in the research that's out there as well. That we're starting to see more of an emphasis on a female-centric approach. I mean, like, I will scream if I see one more research paper that tells me that female athletes have 6 times more ACL injuries than male athletes. I will scream, because we know that. It's like, so what are we going to do about it? Why? And it's not periods. It's not a deficiency in the female athlete. A lot of it is actually more gender-based than sex-based. Female athletes not having access to strength training in gyms or early age neuromuscular programming. And it's about making sure that our young female athletes have the sex-specific resources they need to stay in the game. So, yes, access to strength training and programming and high-level coaching, but also acknowledging that, honestly, something as simple as the right sports bra can keep a young teenage female athlete in the game. Mm-hmm. Last year, the Irish female rugby team switched over to navy shorts from white shorts.
Yep.
And that has literally been a game changer, for those athletes. They're not worried about getting their period. Supporting athletes coming back to sport after having babies. Supporting athletes in their 30s as they're moving into that perimenopausal zone as well. And just acknowledging the reality of biology in terms of how estrogen particularly will affect tendons, will affect bones, will affect muscles, will affect joint pain. And if we know that, we can deal with it. Everything is figure-outable, but we have to have a strategy in place. And acknowledging it is the first step, and then educating everybody, literally from the athletes themselves through their support staff. So it's moving in the right direction, and we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet.
It's amazing. You reminded me the fact that it's only a year ago that somebody decided, hey, let's not make them parade around in white shorts. Let's change it to a color. Is that, do you think, a reflection of finally it's not just a bunch of guys doing the research and therefore going, oh, look, ACL, blah, blah, blah. It's actually female researchers getting involved and having, therefore, the life experience of what we should be looking at. Is that a reflection of better research going on?
I think so. I think, like, being able to have, like, practical life experience of the issues that these athletes are facing. You're not just looking at it from an abstract perspective. You have people like our esteemed friend and colleague Gráinne Donnelly doing her PhD and really driving that conversation forward. But Kelly McNulty, Kirsty Elliott-Sale, and within our FIFA working group, we've got some amazing athletes. Tony Hackney is the cream of the crop, and he's right there as well, kind of leading the charge. So yes, we've got great male researchers in the field, but we're starting to see more and more female researchers coming in as well. And I think that just brings a different perspective that maybe lends itself to a slightly more practical and immediately applicable focus on the research.
Excellent. I've just heard Gráinne Donnelly just put her laundry down and go, you know what, sorry, I'm going to do this later on. And she just sat down to listen to this properly now. Yeah, people, 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐬, if people wonder who 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐬 is, then check out the athletic female. 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐬 has been a guest on the show before. We'll put some of that into the notes, and also with Emma Brockwell. So yeah, definitely names that people should be looking out for. I watched the Olympics when I could with two young kids. It's tricky, and I don't think I was looking for it, but I really noticed the presence and the coverage of not just the female athletes, but also I thought it was wonderful commentators when he had like the various commentators talking and chatting. And it was, I don't know what it was. They just came, I wasn't looking at women anymore put into a place to fit the quota. I was actually engaging, and then now and again thinking, I haven't thought of these women for ages. They're actually engaging me and talking about it, which I thought was a really nice thing, because I have been guilty in the past. I think everybody has. You see on the screen, you think, oh, that's just been put in there to tick a box. But they were so engaging and gave such good reports and such good insight. Obviously, you had great athletes in there as well, Jessica Ellis and that. But yeah, I thought it was great. I'm hoping. It was such a shame. I think one of the things that annoyed me so much about like the boxing controversy is that everything got moved away from the celebrating women in sport, and kind of political agendas got taken over and stuff. But I personally think it was a great year for women in sport in the Olympics, and it was covered, really well. And that's really important, isn't it? Because people watch that, feel empowered, especially young female athletes, and it was good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a saying, and it's a cliche for a reason, but you can't be what you can't see. And so
excellent.
It's so important for the next generation of young girls coming through that they see women achieving at high levels. And what I loved particularly about this particular batch of Olympics was that there was a large number of female athletes who'd come back postnatally. Like they'd had their babies and they were back in sport again, whereas in years gone by that would not have been heard of. And I also need to give a shout out to folks like Simone Biles, who took a break for her mental health and was able to come back as well. And I really see kind of, female athletes not being afraid. And again, these are obviously, high level elite athletes, but not being afraid to kind of break the norm and to look at changing the way the game has been played before. And, some of these athletes who are coming back postnatally, they're actually hitting their PBs after they've had a baby, which is kind of like one of these kind of myths that's out there that once you have a baby, that's it. Your high point in your career is done. But actually, we're seeing the opposite manifesting in real life in the Olympics, but also in the literature as well. So it's an exciting time, I think, to be working in women's health, particularly supporting the female athlete. And just to get that message out there that it doesn't matter, if we're talking about menstrual health or maternal health or menopausal health, physical activity is it's non-negotiable. And so what we have to do from a rehab perspective is to make sure that we're not feeding into the narrative of, oh, you're getting older, kind of aches and pains are normal in your 40s and your 50s, and it's just a sign of aging. I don't buy that, and the research doesn't buy it either. Yes, things are changing, but we now know what actually works to circumvent those changes, particularly those degenerative changes in around the tendons of the hip and the shoulder and the foot. So it's onwards and upwards. There's a lot of good things happening out there, because the research has to come first, because we want to be evidence-based in our approach. But the research is emerging now, and particularly, I would say, over the past 2 or 3 years, we see evidence looking at, we know women, for example, are more prone to osteoarthritis in their hips and their knees than men. But we actually now know that, there are certain dietary strategies, there are certain strength training strategies, as well as the psychosocial metrics that actually have measurable benefits and good outcomes. So it's to make sure that we're up to date with what's happening out there. There's a paper that's out there that it came out a couple of years ago talking about how, on average, it takes about 17 years for the research to trickle down into clinical practice. And we have to rage against that. We have to fight that and stay current. And that's why I think, podcasts are super important, and having these conversations, particularly when it's multidisciplinary. Because literally this afternoon, I was kind of putting together some notes for our chat today, and there was a paper that was released today talking about how there's been more research in sports science done in this decade than in the previous 5 decades combined. Wow. But there's never been as much misinformation, because serious scientists think that if they are good communicators, particularly on social media, they won't be taken seriously in the research or science world. And we're starting to see now this dawning realization that actually this is where folks are getting their information. And if they're not getting good information that is evidence-based, there's a lot of people out there, different influencers who don't have good knowledge to disseminate, that they will fill that gap. So we need to make sure that we're getting the good research out there, getting on social media, doing podcasts, going to conferences, having the conversations, having the chats, and that's how we drive the field forward.
That's really, I love to hear that. It's really positive, because one of my bugs is, and it really depresses me quite a lot, is the misinformation spread by social media. And I feel like it's the most dangerous thing for man's existence that's out there, because people are just fighting each other, black and white, polar debates, and the politics is going crazy. They can persuade people. So it's really nice to hear that if there is a group of scientists who are avoiding social media because if they think they won't be taken seriously, if they start getting involved, then we can kind of change it a little bit. And it is the good thing about social media is it's like a snowball. Once you get a positive, informed ball rolling, then more and more people will see it. So we can use social media in the same way it's spreading misinformation. It can spread good information. So that's really cool. That's a positive thought. And your podcast is one place people should be checking out. So yeah, people, if you haven't seen it yet or heard it yet, then you don't have to go to Spotify. I'm sure it's available everywhere. And you can go to the website as well, celebratemuliebrity.com, and there's links there. But yeah, make that your September new kind of academic year. That's going to be the podcast you're going to sign up for, people, and have a little listen. 46 episodes already there. And I love that. You've already done it. Just so famous in my heart for just dropping these gems. And you've done it now with You Can't Be What You Can't See, which I've actually had to look up because I thought that's incredible. And it's beautiful as well, by Marion Wright Edelman, with regards to the Children's Defence Month Fund. But yeah, what a great way of encapsulating. Yeah, brilliant. I love that. That's a t-shirt in the making, with the other 10 that you've given me, which I need to print out. Wonderful. Thanks so much for that. Right. So we'll talk a little bit more about the research in a bit. I just want to let people know, well, first of all, and I hope it doesn't get boring for you, but yeah, celebrate Muliebrity. Give us, for people who aren't aware, Muliebrity, just in a nutshell, what is it and why did you choose it?
Do you know what? In 20 seconds or less, it's an old English word. It means the art and state of being a woman, and I think it should be celebrated. That's it.
That's it. It's beautiful. Because when you say that, it'll make people just remember it forever now. And they'll be dropping it into their dinner parties and going, of course, if we are going to talk about Muliebrity, and people go, what? And it's all thanks to you. Yeah, it's a beautiful word. And once you think of the meaning, it's one of those words, when you know the meaning, it will just register in your brain. The wires fuse. You think, yeah, I'm going to know that and use that forever. We can have a generation of daughters called Muliebrity or something coming up soon. It's a beautiful word. Can you imagine that? Come here, Muliebrity, in the supermarket. Anyway, yes. And it will all be down to you. So let's actually, I just want to bring up an image because people do email me saying it's so nice to have the images in YouTube. It keeps me engaged and stops me from drifting off. So I'm going to do that. So yeah, the website, celebratemuliebrity.com. So much information on there. It really is a wealth of information, and obviously details of loads of courses and things as well, which if we've got time, we'll talk about at the end of the show. But yeah, there's another one to visit, people. And I hope we've made it quite clear. It's not just a guy thing. Come on now, men. It's not just a man thing. It's something where, like Michelle said, 52% of your patients are probably going to be women. So head along there and make yourself a better therapist. Therapy Expo. So let's change this. You're coming back again this year, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for that. You've got a couple of sessions. Let me just change that and bring it up on the screen. Hide that. I like this as well. It's brilliant. If people go to Therapy Expo, I'm just going to show you some screenshots. If you listen to the podcast, and again, go to YouTube or just go to Therapy Expo. But I'm so thrilled that I'm on the same page as you. Look at that. Look at the M's there shining this year. It's the best letter there. Not only have you got Michelle Lyons there and myself up there at the top, you've got Martin Christensen who's coming all the way from Norway to deliver a couple of speeches. And hopefully I'm going to contact him to try and get him in the STA Theatre as well. I'm just going to call out a few people now who are going to be in the STA Theatre while we're up on the screen. No offense to people who I don't mention, but there's going to be loads of people there worth seeing. But obviously, I've said Michelle, Martin, hopefully. Mike Grice is there. People will know a lot from the show, from Movement Therapy Education. Mike James, who's a wonderful speaker, and I think everyone knows him now. But he was like one of the speakers in the original One Chat Live 2019. I'm just going to show a few more to hopefully whet people's appetites, and then we'll move back to the show if that's okay. Alistair Beverley is going to be in the STA Theatre again, the learning disability physio. Fantastic, absolutely amazing. Andrew McCauley is going to be with us. Andy Hosgood is going to be with us. Anna Maria Mazzieri is going to be with us, as well as managing the hub around the corner. Benoit Matthew is not with us, I don't think, but again, that's a fantastic name. Great to see him back at Therapy Expo. He's been on the website, on the podcast, talking about injuries of the groin, which you can check out. Just a few more here I thought I'd point out. I'm into the seas now. Chris Nice has been on the show before. He's going to be there. Chris Tiley of Never Too Old to Lift. So there's so many people there. I'm not going to go on and on, but it's well worth, hopefully, you going to Therapy Expo website and having a little check out about all the great people who are going to be speaking there. And that's what makes the Expo so good. We were mentioning this last week. Molly was kind of saying that all the speakers seem to be people who, obviously it's a living, but you can tell when they walk around, the organizers, they're going, geez, these speakers are doing it out of love and wanting to change the industry. It's their living, obviously, but you can tell from where they engage and talk, especially in the Q&A sessions, they're doing it for the love, which I suppose is the best formula for healthcare there is, isn't it? Make a living, but you're doing it because of altruism at the end of the day.
Well, if you can nerd out and enjoy it and then have conversations with fellow nerds who are also passionate about it, it's bliss. It's absolute bliss.
That's great to hear. Yes, nerd out. So yes, your involvement at Therapy Extra this year in the STA Theatre, which, like I say, is going to be opening up day 1. So head to the STA Therapy Update Theatre for that on the Wednesday. Muscle and tendons, menstrual, maternal, and menopausal influences, a Q&A with Michelle Lyons. So you've already kind of touched on this. I mean, you've got wonderful alliterations going in there: menstrual, maternal, and menopausal, and Muliebrity, which is brilliant. But give us, without giving too much away, what can people expect in this 25 minutes if they come and join us for that presentation Q&A session?
People will be getting just some immediately applicable insights into identifying the drivers of musculoskeletal dysfunction in the female patients that they're seeing for these injuries. Recognizing the signs, things like red S, things like premature ovarian insufficiency, but also maybe spotting things like PCOS or endo as well. Understanding the effects of different hormonal fluctuations on ligaments, tendons, joints, muscles, and how that changes as we age, as we go through these different hormonal shifts, and some top tips, about getting back into sport, particularly if there's been a significant injury, acknowledging the role of the hormonal cycle, but also with specifics for your postnatal and your perimenopausal female athletes as well. What to look for, what to do, what not to do, and really just putting yourself forward as a therapist who's able to go with a little bit more depth, a little bit more expertise. It's not one size fits all. It's about nuance. It's about being able to bring a bespoke approach to the female athletes that you're serving.
Fantastic. Wealth of information. And the fact it's going to be a Q&A session. We've talked about this last week as well, because you can learn from being in a theatre with somebody at the front and delivering that presentation, you sitting there. But we kind of feel that there's also a load of benefit of that reflection, get people having the courage to ask a question, and then other people in the audience wanted to ask that question, but they were scared. So is it nice for you as an educator to be able to have a Q&A session?
Oh, I love it, because, sometimes these questions will just come, totally left field and things that you haven't thought of, but actually now that it makes sense when you think about the research that's out there, and you can pull it all together and hopefully make it coherent. Because I guarantee you, if one person is thinking of a question, there's somebody else also thinking of that question as well. Maybe they're a little bit nervous, but that is my jam. Just really looking at it from a different angle and being able to pull it together. What do we know? What do we need to consider? Because, at the end of the day, our job is just to help people live well. And it's to bring in all the different facets of people's expertise for that. And what do you think? And have you ever tried this? And I wouldn't do that, but I might do this. And that's, I think, where the magic happens.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's the feedback we got, was in terms of learning and actually retaining information and waking up on the Monday or the Friday and thinking, what do I remember from that? Because it is a massively draining 2 days. A lot of the feedback we got was, you know what, a lot of the information from the Q&A sessions, especially when I asked that question, that I'm going to hold on that forever, because my neurons were just firing. I was listening, I was absorbing it, as opposed to just kind of, it's not to say don't go to the big theatres, because you yourself are going to be in Theatre C on the Wednesday later on at 2:50. But there's something special maybe about just mixing it together, having a bit of both. You know?
It's, I think everybody learns in a slightly different way as well. And I think it's just to have that different approaches and different ways of sparking the conversation and sparking thought. But if there is something that's, that maybe a talk in a theatre has triggered for you, and then you can bring that along to the Q&A and get a different person's perspective even on it as well. I think it just really enriches the event.
Definitely. I've got one of the most polite questions I've ever had in 210 podcasts. Here we go. Can we ask questions now? Said Penny Marie Davis. Of course, Penny. You don't have to ask. No. Actually, this is probably the first episode I said, and if anybody in the live lounge has questions, just fire them away. I didn't say it, and look what happens. Penny, you put your question together and put it in the comments. Be more than happy to answer. But thanks for checking. That's really nice of you. So yeah, whilst Penny's putting a question together, Penny Marie, Theatre C, challenging women's health inequalities within the therapy sector. Tell us a little bit about that. That's at 2:50 on the Wednesday as well. What sort of information is going to be within that?
I think, some of the things that we've touched on already, like just simple things like having period supplies, making sure that people have the kit that they need for that. Sometimes it can, this is from my own personal experience, like when I started out, when I graduated first, in the primordial mists of time many years ago, I was working for a fairly high-level men's football team, and I was the only woman kind of in the mix. And, it's to be able to hold your own in that conversation and in the ensuing conversations about making decisions about player welfare and about athlete welfare. So have you got enough confidence to kind of hold your own, but also challenging any of the inequities and biases that you might face as well, and making sure that you are so solid in your knowledge and in your research that it just cannot be questioned. And because I think when you know yourself what you're saying is true, you sit a little bit deeper in the saddle and you're able to hold your own, because it can be quite intimidating, I think, as a female therapist in a very male-centric, and it can be a little bit of a different atmosphere, let's say, than a female-centric environment. And it's just to be able to hold your own in your own way, because you have such value to bring to the table, the treatment table, but the decision-making table as well. So it's about all the things, the clinical end of it, how you carry yourself professionally in it, and just to have the confidence and the competence to be an excellent therapist in that environment.
Marvelous. Sounds fantastic. One of the things about comparing in the STA theatres, because of course I can't really make it to any of these theatres, but I will get feedback. But sounds absolutely amazing. So that's going to be Theatre C. So you got the Q&A in the morning, and then later on, if you want to see Michelle Lyons, then it's 2:52 to 3:35 in Theatre C, challenging women's health inequalities within the therapy sector. Right then, do I have a quick read of Penny's question before I bring it up? She just bring it up. She was so polite. Let's bring it straight up. What can go wrong? Here we go. I've recently quite a few ladies with plantar fascia discomfort, some in both feet. Please can you offer me some direction to where I can source information to help them and me to understand? Are orthotics the answer, which seems to be what most local physios offer? Bit of an on-the-spot question, but what do you think?
It is. Well, what I would say is a couple of different, I would have questions for your question. What is the age profile of these athletes? Are they menstruating regularly? Oftentimes, in my experience, I find that plantar fascia problems are often misdiagnosed as plantar fasciitis when it's actually a posterior tibial tendinopathy. So I'd be really careful about the diagnosis that's going on in there. Some good information coming out, particularly about the role of soleus strengthening and soleus endurance as well. So, in days gone by, it would be like get in there, and we'd be kind of going hell for leather with manual therapy and flaring things up. But what we're actually seeing now in a lot of these inflammatory and potentially degenerative conditions as well, we've got to look at what's happening in terms of the inflammatory load. So has training changed recently? What's nutrition like? What's sleep like? What's stress management like? as well as all the hormonal influences, and then looking for those musculoskeletal masqueraders that can often be the hidden drivers. So I would say don't rush towards orthotics, rule out everything else, and then we can have the conversation. But I would say, first of all, let's look at what's going on physiologically, hormonally, and then kind of build it out towards those lifestyle factors before we jump the gun.
Excellent. Great advice there, Penny. Fantastic. Are they runners, Penny? I'm just interested if you are talking about runners. I'm assuming they're runners just because I look after runners, but yeah, let us know who they are, and that would be useful maybe to continue the conversation. And yeah, like Michelle says, just start off looking at the person. That's the answer. Look at the person first of all, what's going on in their lives and everything, and what's going on physiologically, systemically with them, and watch out for quick fixes. I mean, orthotics might be able to. I always see orthotics as a little bit of a crutch, like it can offload. It could make them hurt less for a while. But you've got to remember it's a dose, isn't it? You've got to explain to them that if pain needs to be calmed down, this might help. Won't definitely, because it varies from person to person, but it's something worth try out, because you can, and then they'll listen to you. I love that 𝐒𝐫𝐴𝐷𝐼𝐴 alliance, which comes from if you do manage to offload their pain a little bit, then they'll be, oh, tell me more, kind of like a bit of a Yoda moment, but it's not going to be the solution probably. Could be, but
it's look, the goal is always to get them out of trouble and then to keep them out of trouble. So yeah, it's like if a heel raise or a gentle orthotic gets them out of trouble, that's okay. But again, we want to make sure that's not the whole picture, that we are actually looking at what's causing the problem in the first place and going deeper.
Fantastic. Great question, Penny. Thank you very much for taking us off to that angle. We're looking forward to the follow-up. So I'm just going to hide that for a second. Right. So we've covered Therapy Expo. So yeah, you've already kind of mentioned a little bit of the exciting new research regarding musculoskeletal health and menopause. I found it so interesting when you said new research. I think, forgive me, I'm not quite sure, but I think it was you who last year pointed out to me, if it's not, this is going to be terrible. I'm pretty sure it was. A year before that conference, it was quite big about having apps to track periods and stuff, and you suddenly appeared. I think it was just before your talk started. You just left me thinking, oh my god, this is so true. But it was like you said, oh, some research is coming out suggesting that we shouldn't over rely on apps, because there's plenty of champions and elite athletes and people setting records at times where they in theory shouldn't be. So that was a really nice example. I thought, wow, because I got quite caught up in that. I was like, this is great. Everybody get an app, follow your menstrual cycle. You'll have one time where you're going to be great, 1 month where you should pull back. And it's not necessarily that straightforward, is it?
Not at all, because like, how could you do that with a team sport? You'd have everybody at different phases of their cycle. And, I'm going to quote Kirsty Elliott-Sale here, who's done quite a bit of research around this. And she would say that, women have won Olympic medals, World Cups, World Championships at every stage of their menstrual cycle. Mm-hmm. What we do know is that it's really important for every woman to track their own cycle and to know what their own individual fluctuations are throughout their cycle. So if you know, for example, that during your period, just day 1 or day 2, that you're going to be kind of crampy, you might have a little bit of diarrhea, then to maybe lay off the coffee, because that's a bit of a bowel stimulant. You might want to look into getting something like a TENS machine, to help you deal with the cramps. If you're tracking, say, over 3 months, and that you're a little bit more prone to constipation or to back pain during the luteal phase of your cycle, what measures can you take for that as well? If you're not going to sleep as well, if you're going to be a little bit low energy at certain parts of your cycle versus a little bit higher energy, how can you maximize your own bespoke, approach to working with your menstrual cycle instead of working against it? What's been really interesting to me is kind of talking to different organizations that are working with athletes at higher levels, is that there's been a complete U-turn in how female athletes now are being looked after. A lot of the higher level athletes are being discouraged from going on the oral contraceptive pill, because we now recognize that the menstrual cycle is actually the 5th vital sign. It's really given us a ton of information about how athletes are managing their training load. Are they eating enough? Are they sleeping enough? versus how they're performing. Because if you've got low energy availability, your period is often the first thing to disappear. And so that's a big red flag that, you could be on the path somewhere between low energy availability and red S. And so we're now seeing more of an acknowledgement of the importance of the menstrual cycle and really understanding that it's a superpower rather than a hindrance. And we can tap into that and make it work for us. But we also have to acknowledge, then as we get a little bit older, and when I say older, I mean from our early 30s on, that we are going to have changes in terms of how hormones are produced and in terms of how our muscles and tendons react to those changing levels as well. So the things that often work for us in our 20s will not work for us in our 30s and certainly not into our 40s. And it's to be able to kind of, again, bring that sort of nuanced approach to working with female athletes that I think is really important, particularly, if you're working with somebody who's just got this recurrent, injury after injury, and they're picking up colds and infections, what's going on with that? And just, again, it's to really kind of bring home that message that women are not small men, because men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. And so it resets every 24 hours, and it's fairly regular the whole way through. But females are going to have, 28 to 35 days, and it's going to change and evolve depending on whether or not they're getting pregnant, they're having babies, they're on the pill, they're on an IUD, they're approaching perimenopause, maybe they're having an early menopause. And so there's a lot more layers to consider, especially when it comes to muscles and tendons. And I think we have to be really on the ball that we don't treat musculoskeletal health the same way in female athletes versus male.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great example of staying on top of the research and being informed, which brings us a little bit back to Penny Marie Davis's question of obviously she should check out your website for a start, goes without saying. But she's just come back with the majority, it's a mixed bag, majority of 45 to 55 and love exercise classes and PT, which straight away has sent alarm bells in my head of people jumping up and down an old cold stone sort of church halls and just having so much energy, or thinking you've got energy. That's what I seem to see in that population is, I've been in the Sahara working with ultra athletes, and I've seen people, female runners beating male runners. And it makes me think, is there kind of this, because it must be, a lot of it is 90% in mental and the other 10% is in your head. It's kind of it's amazing what happens at that age to women, and they do shine later on in sport. But sometimes that desire could be misplaced, can't it? You can easily do too much.
Easily, yeah. There's some interesting research showing that female athletes will excel at endurance events as they get a little bit older compared to male athletes. Because of the way we oxidize fuel, we're able to because the male athlete is going to be more dependent on carb energy, and whereas the female athlete can tap into fat reserves a little bit more efficiently. So female endurance athletes will tend to outperform male endurance athletes, particularly in that masters category. But what we have to be very careful of is there's still a huge tendency for women, particularly I would say in their 40s and 50s, to very much focus on the cardio aspect of physical activity and not enough emphasis on strength training. And that's the secret sauce for ideally avoiding these tendon issues, but certainly in their resolution as well, whether we're talking about rotator cuff or gluteal tendinopathy or the posterior tibial tendon, which again is often the masquerader for plantar fascia problems. And I think what we have to really be careful of, a lot of women are still afraid maybe they're going to bulk up. And, you're really not, particularly perimenopause. Trust me, you are not going to bulk up if you're doing strength training. But we know that lifting heavy, fewer reps, heavier weights, really important. But we also have to acknowledge that for female athletes, their pelvic health concerns are a barrier for 1 in 2 in participating in physical activity. So we have to make sure that we're addressing pelvic health issues with these athletes as well, whether or not they've had babies. This is not just for your postnatal athletes, because the female pelvic floor is really incredibly linked in with obviously with everything that's going on hormonally, but we've got some interesting research looking at back pain in women and the link between pelvic floor dysfunction and back pain in women. About 95% of women with back pain will have some sort of pelvic floor dysfunction, and about 70% of those will actually have overactivity in the pelvic floor muscles. So we have to look at what's happening centrally as well, stress management, energy availability, sleep, all of those things, fear of aging, but certainly making sure that we're not afraid to screen for pelvic health issues when it comes to physical activity, and then knowing what to do with those answers as well. So again, it's another facet to think of, because men, as long as they have their prostate in place, it's very unlikely that male athletes are going to have urinary leakage. Male athletes can have pelvic pain issues, particularly the cyclists and the rowers and the equestrian athletes, if they've got some compression of the pudendal nerve or artery, or if they've got some overactivity of the pelvic floor muscles. But generally, from a bladder or bowel leakage issue, we're going to see more of that being a problem in our female athletes. So again, are we screening for that? Whether or not pelvic health, exam or treatment is technically in your scope of practice, there's some really great new tools out there. There's one that's specifically for female athletes. It's called the Pelvic Floor Dysfunction Sentinel, the PFD Sentinel. It was published last year by 𝐒𝐩𝐲𝐫𝐭𝐬 in BJSM, and it's a really simple checklist about some things that might lead you to believe that there's an issue with the pelvic floor, and all these things are super easily fixable. But first of all, we have to, in the same way that we're comfortable talking about the ACL or the plantar fascia, let's bring pelvic health into the mix as well when we're talking about injuries for the female athletes, again, whether they're amateur, weekend warriors, or elite level athletes.
Excellent. Load of information there for Penny and everybody. But yeah, the strength training is so important. Hey, we don't know what relationship you have with your groups and your clients, but I think for most of us, there's conversations which we're not having. Even female therapists with female clients, it's not just a case of in the men don't talk. It's a lot of the female therapists aren't used to talking about it either, or just don't imagine they should be bringing it up. So hopefully there's a lot of stuff there for you, Penny, to be cracking on with your group, that lucky group you've now got with you looking after them. The first thing was just coming on the podcast and asking that question. Hey, you're halfway there already, that's the best thing to do, is just communicate and ask other people. Right, time is ticking on, 8:56. Let's have a little talk about courses. What have you got going on the website, Michelle, at Muliebrity, celebratemuliebrity.com? What should people know about? I mean, it's difficult to say all the courses, but what's proving very popular at the moment, or do you recommend?
Yeah, so I do think that the female athlete is having a moment. So, I'm in the middle of updating, because there's been such great new research about female athletes and pelvic health and musculoskeletal health in general. I'm in the throes of updating all the modules in that course right now, whether we're talking about postnatal returning to exercise. We're changing some of our outlooks on the time frames with that and some of the exercise strategies that we need to employ. Of course, menopausal health is my particular passion, but just really looking at, again, making sure that we're giving women evidence-based advice and information, whether we're trying to prevent injuries or we're recovering from them, the importance of sleep hygiene. We're coming into October, which is traditionally Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that's the other hat that I wear. So I'm multi-passionate. I'm deeply, deeply nerdy. This is what I do for fun. I'm reading, I'm updating courses, I'm going to conferences, I'm chatting about the stuff that I'm reading. This is my life. It's kind of sad, really, but I like it.
Not sad at all. It's not sad at all, and definitely not for us. Amazing. And it was wrong of me to point at any courses. It's up to you, therapists, to go and have a look at everything that's there and see what fits in with your clients, with your current knowledge. There will be something there, I'm sure. And just seeing where the holes are in your knowledge and how they can help your audience. So, yeah, definitely worth having a look at www.celebratemuliebrity.com. All links will obviously go in the show notes. Also, Instagram, Michelle Lyons _Muliebrity. That's worth people following there. Still active on there? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I generally, if I come across something interesting, I'm going to whack it up on Instagram. And again, if the people who are listening here now, or who are maybe watching it down the line, have questions, because if you're anything like me, I come up with these really insightful questions at about 2 a.m. the following day. Like, feel free to reach out on Instagram, or better yet, come along to Therapy Expo and have a chat there.
That would be lovely if you can make it to Birmingham. Yeah, that'd be great. And also, I've started to say it's a little bit more. People are starting to leave comments on YouTube videos, which is great. I spent a whole time answering a load today. If you've got questions, let YouTube be the kind of like pages where you can ask those questions, because YouTube is great. Being part of Google, it's there forever and it comes up really quickly in Google search results. So if you have got any questions about this, put something in YouTube. I do monitor it, and I can easily give it a little elbow to Michelle and say, hey, next time you're in a Tesco's, please have a little look at YouTube. Someone's got some questions there. Thank you very much. But yeah, YouTube is probably a great place, whereas Facebook just disappears. But yeah, use the comments in YouTube, and we can keep that going for reference and scroll back and look at how our knowledge together has improved over the years. That'd be great. Also, there's the Facebook group as well, which the link will go into the show notes as well. So there we go, 9 o'clock. Thank you so much, Michelle. I love watching how the sun has come down now behind you in the car. It's dark there. Is there anybody else left in the car park, or is it just you now sitting in the centre?
Oh, there's a few hardy souls still in there doing their shopping.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for giving us your time once again, and really look forward to seeing you in person. How fantastic, in 91 days, which is absolutely fantastic to think about. Can be fab. Thank you for everyone joining us live in the live lounge. And if you listen to the podcast and you do want to join live, then just head along to, like I say, Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel, 8 o'clock. Next Tuesday, for example, I'll let you know what we're doing next Tuesday. Next Tuesday is going to be a real special one. They're all special. But next Tuesday in particular, I'm very excited. And let's bring up an image for you guys who like the images. My guests are going to be, there we go, Armed Force veterans Rich Davis and Rich Potter. Okay, now these guys, the episode is going to be called The Limb-Itless. Okay, The Limb-Itless. And you probably, hopefully, sense what's going to happen now. The Limitless Expedition, Conquering the Himalayas. Like I say, with the special guests, Armed Forces veterans Rich Davis and Rich Potter. They're going to be coming to us with their sports therapists, Carla Bickerstaff and Jenny Lane, who've been on the show before. Because together these people have been preparing for a fantastic challenge. They are going to be rewriting the limits of what's possible for amputees, because both, I should say, are below knee amputees as a result of complex traumas leading to the complex regional pain syndrome. And they are going to be embarking on a groundbreaking journey, I think leaving in about 4 or 5 weeks, basically conquering the Snowman Trek, which is the most challenging trek in Bhutan, a Buddhist kingdom on the Himalayas eastern edge. It really is. If you look into it, and I'm going to be giving details, we can see here there's a Just Giving page which shows exactly what these guys are up to. It's known as the toughest trek in the world and often referred to as the Everest of trekking. Crosses 11 mountain passes at altitudes of over 5,500 meters, and these guys are going to stay above 4,000 meters for most of the trek. With their guides from Breathe Bhutan, they're going to cover a distance of just over 200 miles in less than 40 days. And they're doing it. Their mission is twofold, as it explains on the Just Giving page. One is simply to inspire others by showing the incredible capabilities of amputees. And then secondly, they are raising funds for 2 incredible charities, the Royal British Legion and also BLESMA, BLESMA, which is the Limbless Veterans Charity, which offers support, advice and camaraderie to limbless and injured veterans and service personnel as they rebuild their lives. So excited to have these guys along. And like I say, they're going to be with 2 sports therapists and massage therapists who have been working with them, Carla Bickerstaff and Jenny Lane, who were so kind to introduce me to the 2 Riches. And that's going to be next week. I mean, it really is going to be one probably to actually come and watch it on YouTube, because I know from chatting with these guys, I mean, you thought Michelle Lyons was passionate. Well, she is. You can't top Michelle. But this is going to equal it, I'm sure. And like I say, they're leaving in 4.5, 5 weeks or something. And it'd be great as well to inspire you to give some money to such a worthwhile cause as well. So if you are listening to the podcast, which I will try and get out before this next show, then do try and come along live wherever you are in the world, and join in as I talk to the 2 Riches before they set off for this fantastic limitless expedition conquering the Himalayas. But for now, just once again, thank you so much, Michelle Lyons of celebratemuliebrity.com. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Lovely to be here.
Amazing. Such information. I can't wait to listen back to this episode myself. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. Cecily Hyslop says, great chat. Thank you both. Don't thank me. It was all about Michelle tonight. And also Nikki Mansfield says, oh, now I feel bad for not thanking Matt. Thanks, Matthew. Oh, Matthew. Sounds like my mum's having a go at me. And Grenier has managed to keep Grenier's interest while she's folding the sheets. I said, fab to you both. Thanks. Wonderful. Pleasure to have you along, Grenier. We have to get you back on the show as well soon. We'd love to hear what you're up to. Right, people. If you can join us next Tuesday, wonderful. If not, make sure you do subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, because it just helps the great word of our amazing guests like Michelle reach higher in Google, which is the secret to disseminating this information. Just please leave your reviews and leave your ratings, and that will really help our industry. Take care, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.